Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And may I just say it's an honour to be able to rise on an issue as important as a bill that deals with Canada's border. I have been among those sounding the alarm for years about the Liberal government's inaction on the border, and when there has been action that has aggravated and exacerbated the problems. These are long-standing challenges caused by a Liberal government that, despite its proclamations, is not a new government, but a continuation of what we've had over the last 10 years. Now, while I am heartened to the fact that the Liberals have acknowledged there is a border crisis, I have a great many concerns with the way they've chosen to tackle that. Now, let me be clear. One of the biggest issues that in my media career I would frequently criticize the government's handling of was the lax approach to border security. One notable example of this is allowing Roxham Road to balloon into a full-blown illegal immigration scheme that the government turned a blind eye to. This was something that happened for years and years and years, and the government would not act. Issues pertaining to smuggling of firearms, of drugs, even of people, have been allowed to become the crisis they are today. So while I am grateful the Liberals have decided to come to the party late, I do have to ask why it took so long. What prevented them from taking action on this? Now, let me be perfectly clear that a lot of the issues we see with crime and drugs in our country, gang violence using illegal firearms smuggled in across the border, these are issues that cannot just be neatly siloed off into one particular portfolio. You see, when we've been asking the Liberals for the last couple of weeks about this and saying, why is there nothing in this bill that deals with sentencing for fentanyl kingpins? Why is there nothing that deals with bail issues that allow repeat offenders to continue to be out on the street after offending? They've always come back to the same position, which is, well, this is just a border bill. It's not a crime bill. But that's a very narrow and naive way of looking at this legislation, to not understand that these cross-border issues are integrally connected to the crime and justice issues that they are not acknowledging, that they are not acting on, and that this bill has no solutions for. So on this, I will say that I'm grateful the government has taken some suggestions that the Conservatives have made over the years and put them in this bill. But the problem with this is that it is an omnibus bill. It tries to do a great many things. Some of it is stuff that I would say the Conservatives have been leaders on. Others are things that I look at the legislation and I wonder where it came from. I wonder who was asking for it. So while there is a lack of addressing bail issues, a lack of addressing sentencing issues, there are things in here that I cannot imagine why the Liberals thought they were relevant for a bill that, by their own admission, is supposed to be about the border. I want to focus on two of those right now because I have a long track record, Mr. Speaker, of advocating for civil liberties. One of the provisions of this bill, Part 4, gives Canada Post unilateral power to open not just parcels, but also letters. Now, this means that a letter that you send, Mr. Speaker, to anyone in the country could be intercepted without a warrant, without judicial oversight, by someone at Canada Post. Now, this is something that we have heard in the course of debate over this evening and this afternoon, some misinformation from the Liberal government. They say, oh no, it's subject to warrant. Well, I have combed through the legislation. I have combed through the entire bill, but also Part 4 specifically. And in Part 4, which deals with changes to Canada Post, the Canada Post Corporation Act, the word warrant does not appear once. The word warrant does not appear. In the act that this section of the bill cites, there is no discussion of warrants whatsoever. So we are left as Canadians with the questions that the Liberal government is not answering. What are the constraints on this power? What is Canada Post entitled to do or authorized to do with not just goods they may seize, but with information they seize? Because they specifically in this bill talk about intercepting letters. That doesn't just mean opening an envelope and looking for fentanyl. That means opening a piece of mail and being allowed to read it. Who has access to this correspondence? What can be done with it? Will it be tracked? Will it be registered? Will it be entered into a database? These are questions that we do not have answers for because the Liberals are denying that the text of the bill is what it is. And moreover, the bill actually gives Canada Post immunity. It takes away any liability for anything arising from demand, seizure, detention, or retention, which means you have no rights as a Canadian to question or challenge what Canada Post is doing with your mail. And to be clear, Canada Post has not asked for this power that I have seen. This is something the Liberal government is voluntarily handing over without any regard for the civil liberties concerns. And then we look at Part 11 of the bill, which bans cash transactions over $10,000. It does not put a reporting requirement. It does not restrict it. It does not add bureaucracy or red tape. It is a clear ban. I will read directly from the bill. Every person or entity that is engaged in a business, a profession, or the solicitation of charitable financial donations from the public commits an offense if the person or entity accepts a cash payment, donation, or deposit of $10,000 or more in a single transaction or in a prescribed series of related transactions that total $10,000 or more. Now, I mean, after 10 years of economic mismanagement, $10,000 is a regular haul at the grocery store, Mr. Speaker. But $10,000, this may seem like an amount, as the Liberals like to say, that, well, no one is dealing in that. No one is going around and dealing in $10,000 transactions unless they have something to hide. I represent a lot of rural and smaller communities in my riding. It is not uncommon for someone to go and buy a used vehicle, to buy a farm truck, to buy a new piece of equipment for $10,000, $15,000. And you may say, as the Liberals do, well, why would anyone need to do that? Well, we live in a free society where we do not need to justify our decision to engage in transactions with legal tender to the government. And I'm very aware of the fact that as I speak, the federal government, the Liberal government, is actively fighting in court against a federal court decision that found its use of the Emergencies Act was illegal in 2022. This is a government that unlawfully and unconstitutionally froze people's bank accounts without due process and without oversight. Now, that sent a chill throughout the country as people realized that this is a government that would use its power without regard for the law. So I do not accept that this government is permitted to say, just trust us, with putting a further restriction in place on how Canadians transact. And this is incredibly important. The Bank of Canada, which the Prime Minister used to run, has been advocating for central bank digital currency. Again, something that puts government more in control and more able to monitor the transactions that Canadians choose to undertake. There are many reasons that people would use cash. It does not mean, and in fact, in most cases that I'm aware of, it has nothing to do with law breaking. It's simply because of convenience, avoiding staggering credit card fees, the ability to transact and ensure that the local farmer's market, the person selling the vehicle in your riding, in your neighborhood, whatever it is able to do so free of government interference. So this is a bill that, while I am grateful it's dealing with some issues at the border that we have long been calling for solutions for as Conservatives, it is taking a very broad brush, and in doing so, treating ordinary law-abiding Canadians as though they are criminals, as though they have something that they must hide from the government, that they must be doing something wrong simply because, like anyone else who identifies as quote-unquote old school, is simply using cash. What other legal things is the government planning to regulate or restrict? So the fact that we are looking at this bill with how many different sections and different parts it has, we have to look at the good and we have to look at the bad. And I think that the government has tried to do too much in the course of this legislation, where we have to look at the civil liberties concerns. And again, any time this has been raised in the course of debating this, the Liberals have fallen back on either making a false claim, such as that a warrant is required under the Canada Post section, which it's not, or just relying on the fact that we are to trust them because there's no way the Liberal government would abuse this power. Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't trust them, and my constituents don't trust them either.